There's been a lot of videos circulating with libtards igniting Tesla cars, and that's terrible. We would love to borrow Elon Musk for a while. So it might also be not only the biggest heist in history, but a distraction from what actually went on. But they could manage to hide it in an electro-technological system with blockchain and bitcoins. There are some conspiracy theories out there that saying, it's a bit of a coincidence. You would only see a smaller amount of people getting richer and richer on a growing amount of people getting poorer and poorer. And you also have Ericsson, you have the Wallenberg family in 184 countries around the world.
Welcome to the system, everyone's a victim. Doesn't matter if you're black or white, it hates you all.
Hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Eldtalk in English, where we explore our Swedish heritage and broadcast it to the world. We have a lot of things going on in Sweden. Sweden is actually kind of an interesting country. It's a very small country with only 10 million people, but it's a little bit like Donald Trump said himself. It's a small country, but sharp, very sharp.
Sweden's a great country. It's small, but it's very sharp, I will tell you. They are very sharp.
And it is a sharp country. We do have a few people, at least, who enjoy talking about monetary mechanics, geopolitics, and emotionally based values based on emotions. We can change them. And that's some of the things we talk a bit around our digital campfire. But there's been a lot of videos circulating with libtards igniting Tesla cars, and that's terrible. That is if that is your argumentation style, one can't stop wondering if these people should even be allowed to vote in a society, unless you can communicate your ideas productively. I don't know if we need these people voting, because they obviously don't know enough about how the economy works, how politics work. If you think that Elon Musk is nothing else but a hero that is draining the swamp and finding ineffectivities in the government. We actually need that in Sweden as well. We would love to borrow Elon Musk for a while, so that he can help us because we're in some big shit trouble here in Sweden, because our government is super ineffective with a purpose. It's built like this. We are actually talking a little bit about a republic, and maybe have a Scandinavian union based on a constitution, because that's something that we lack here in Sweden. We do have a department of government called the Constitution Committee, which is kind of odd because we don't even have a constitution in Sweden. But that's how it is. We actually have we have based our legislative system on something called the principle of sovereignty. And our law book starts with something that says that all public power should come from the people. That's what we have here. We have that sentence instead of the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. If you have those three, they can keep each other in check, and that is very good to combat corruption in society. We have nothing of that, none of that. We have a sentence that says that all public power should come from the people. The only problem is that nobody knows what the people means. It's not even defined. One would think that if you're going to base your whole legislative system and the courts and not a single lawyer has raised their hand and said, I think there's something wrong with this. The people is not even defined. We don't know if people means the deep state people, if it means the nobleman in Sweden. We don't know if it means people of Swedish heritage. We don't know if the immigrants who have come to Sweden and who live here now are part of the people. We don't even know if it is based on the area, the geographical area, or if Brazilians in Brazil are part of the people here. It's not defined. It's a big problem. I'm sure if Elon Musk was here and he heard this, his mind would have been blown as well, right? Because it's really crazy. And anyway, we have a bigger problem than Elon Musk. He's not a problem, but some people seem to suggest he is. We have bigger problems with fiat currency that have been running wild. The Federal Reserve's quantitative easings, it does affect the whole world. But not only that, we have the same problem in Sweden. The oldest central bank still in operation is actually here in Sweden, and it has been printing fiat currency since forever. And we left the gold standard in 1931. When Banks of International Settlement was introduced. But we are still looking at what happened to the Nazi gold during the Second World War, because it was washed through Banks of International Settlements. And it was a creation by, guess who? The usual suspects, the Wallenberg family, that is the most powerful family here in Sweden. He was in war. He was actually Marcus Laurentius Wallenberg was actually mentor to Thomas McKentrick, who set up Banks of International Settlement. So you can see the connection is there. And they collaborated with Allen Dulles and the Dulles brothers during the Washington negotiations. So they are very connected, and we don't really know what happened with the Nazi gold, but it is a possibility that we can't rule out that they actually did that whole thing on purpose. Actually, who knows? And did that in order to blackmail the rest of the deep state. So as long as the Holocaust is a very delicate topic, which for some reason it is. I mean, we're not allowed to question the official narrative. You might go to jail if you live in Germany, and we are introducing the same laws here in Sweden, so we can't question it. And I am not questioning it at all. I'm just saying we always need to be able to revision history. Because what if it turns out to be the double amount of Jews that were gassed in the chambers? Right? And was it only Jews? Because we also have the insurance companies and the insurance umbrella company called Thule Insurances, that also came from Sweden. Now, if you run an umbrella insurance company for the other insurance companies in Europe, one might think they might have had a register of all valuable goods in Europe as well, because it is a funny thing that the Nazis knew which door to knock on, right? So it might also be not only the biggest heist in history, but a distraction from what actually went on, right? And that does not mean that a lot of people were not killed and gassed in the chambers. We don't even need to question that, but it could have had a lot of outcomes. And through propaganda, we have been programmed to just see one perspective. And if you look throughout history, if you go back further than Banks of International Settlements in 1931, it is pretty clear. It's the same pattern all over again. We used to have jubilees years where they pretty much crossed all the debt, and we started all over again. And that used to be every 50 years or so. So people could plan out. Now, if we would have the banks forgive all debt and just start all over again, well, that's exactly what's going to happen. We only have one chance to get this right, because all technology that's coming, if we don't do it correctly this time, we are entering 1,000 years of slavery, a technocracy controlling the human population through technology, through blockchain, through drones, and you've probably seen those fucking robots, dogs. So the only solution is that we become much better than the banks themselves describing the system, so they can't just talk down to us like they've done for centuries. And if you look, anytime the system were getting closer to a foreclosure, so to speak, we have seen wars, we have seen famine and plague. Now, if you go back in European time, in 1350 in Venice, I think we spoke about it in the last couple of episodes as well, we did have a major bank crash, and the Black Death followed, the plague. Coincidence, of course. But it's pretty interesting that we are getting closer to a similar situation today, with the banking system is actually debt saturated. They are not able to create any more money with any credibility. And that's a big problem, because credibility is the only thing holding this whole system together. And the more money they need to create, less credible the system gets. I mean, eventually we all walk around with wheelbarrows, unless they manage to hide that inflation, or it's actually just output of liquidity. But they could manage to hide it in an electro-technological system with blockchain and bitcoins, and you have a supercomputer changing all the numbers to make it easier to read, and that would fool a lot of people for another 200 years. But you would only see a smaller amount of people getting richer and richer on a growing amount of people getting poorer and poorer. That's mathematically the only possible way if we continue with this system. So it's going in the right direction thanks to people like Elon Musk, and a change of leadership in the intelligence services. You have Ratcliffe, pretty interesting name for the position he holds. You have Kash Patel, Tulsi Gabbard, and Dan Bongino as well. And you also have Elon Musk blocking a transaction to World Economic Forum on about $52 million, which is amazing. So it's heading in the right direction. And those news are lightening up all the darkness, right? So I can't believe the libtards. Even here in Sweden, we have libtards. I mean, they're everywhere, right? We have big problems. A lot of Swedish people's best argument against Trump is that he's orange. I don't even think he's orange. And you also have those elites who pay these libtards to run around and pay and ignite Tesla cars, put them on fire. And you had riots in Charlottesville and so forth. Black Lives Matter, Antifa, and those sort of organizations are funded by NGOs. People like George Soros. Yeah, he actually have a new ad out. I mean, check this out. Rent a riot, motherfuckers. Yeah. So he got a new product out, and we wish him the best of luck in finding new clientele. I'm sure there are probably a few deep state actors still left who would just simply love to start a riot at this time in history. Because that's the best way for the deep state to flip the chessboard. It would be a riot. It would be libtards running around, putting cars on fire, creating turmoil that could be benefiting the deep state. So they are salivating. So George Soros, I'm getting you some customers. I hope you give me cut because I'm not working for free, mofo. Anyway, he keeps the masses entertained with what he does, right? He funds rainbow revolutions all around the world, and you have the Maidan Revolution 2014 that was the starting point that led on to the Ukrainian war, where Russia was forced to intervene because Azatov troops, who have those Nazi emblems on their shoulders and such, were targeting the Russian speaking part of the Ukrainian population, right? And that's terrible. We don't like that at all. And it's also fucked up to see Zelensky recruiting 18-year-olds in white vans, driving them to the front against their will, and forcing them to shoot on drones and such. Does it even make sense? These drones are operated by people sitting in their homes, eating dinner, shooting at 18-year-olds. So we are living in such a paradoxical world. We are witnessing Hunger Games down on the streets. We are seeing libtards igniting cars, putting bins on fire and whatnot. But anyway, India did not want to rent a riot. They raided 8 branches of Open Society Foundation that is controlled by George Soros. George Soros was involved in bringing down the krone in the 90s, beginning of the 90s. He helped Sweden devalue the currency. Have you heard this term from somebody on stage somewhere? Devalue their currency. They devalue their currency. I don't think he was talking about China, actually. I think he spoke about another country. And did you see this picture about the pyramids? I mean, come on, man. If this is true, I don't know what to believe anymore. We don't really know where we are. For real. Like, we have no clue. There might be people on the planet that knows, but the large majority, and I'm talking like the big players, we have no idea where the fuck we are. If this is true, it changes everything. And I'm going back to my history teacher. I'm going to ask him for a refund. Because whatever this is, I'm lost for words. And America recently went out with a press release showing their latest fighter jet, the F-47, which actually is not only state-of-the-art technology, looks very good. It's a beautiful plane. And it is actually 1.5 generation better than the Jonsson Grip, which is one of Sweden's biggest exports, most important industrial products that we have to sell for the income, for the cash. And this plane, Jonsson Grip, have been dominating the market since its introduction in the beginning of the 1990s. This F-47 is a huge competitor, and let's see what happens to Sweden. We probably need to stop manufacturing so much weapons and call ourselves a neutral country. We are neutral. We sell weapons to all sides of any war. So it's fair that way. But it's interesting with Jonsson Grip, because Gripen is actually a wyvern in English. And there was a kind of mysterious, powerful nobleman back in the 1330s, about 700 years ago, who called himself Gripen. And he actually put the wyvern on his logo. That's Saab, still used today. And we're going to read a little bit about this guy because he's an interesting character. And you also need to understand him and his history in order to understand modern Sweden today. He had a huge impact into it. Let's get into it. Bo Jonsson Grip, who was born in 1330s and he died 1386. He was not a businessman in the modern sense, but a medieval aristocrat, statesman and landowner, who became the richest and most powerful non-royal figure in Swedish history. His wealth wasn't earned through trade or industry, but through a combination of inheritance, strategic marriages, political maneuvering, and ruthless land acquisition, often exploiting a chaotic era in Sweden's history. Here's how he did it. Bo Jonsson came from the Grip family, a noble lineage with roots traceable to the late 13th century. While not among Sweden's wealthiest initially, his family held land in Östergötland and Småland. It's like some regional areas. His grandfather, Thomas Jonsson, was a knight, and his father, Jon Thomasson, married into minor nobility, laying a modest foundation. Bo's first major boost came through his own marriages. His wife, Margareta Persdotter Pors, was from a wealthy family, and though she died in childbirth around 1360, her dowry and inheritance significantly increased his holdings. His second wife, Margareta Dume, brought further connections and resources, though less is documented about her wealth. There are some conspiracy theories out there that saying, it's a bit of a coincidence that his wife died and he became rich on the coup, right? It's a bit strange. You never know, though. It was back in the day, but can't be ruled out that Mr. Bo Jonsson Grip had some moral issues, for a lack of better words. He exploited the Black Death in Europe, the plague, and that was caused by economic chaos that followed the bank crash as well. So in the mid-14th century, which was a turbulent time in Sweden, the Black Plague, the death, killed about a third of the population, decimating the peasantry and weakening the economy. This left vast tracts of land abandoned or undervalued, ripe for acquisition by those with power and cunning. Bo Jonsson capitalized on this instability, buying or seizing farms and estates at a low cost. By the 1370s, he controlled over 1,500 farms across 350 parishes. From Kalmar to Falun, and that's an area exceeding a third of Sweden's territory. And that surpassed even the king's holdings. Bo Jonsson's rise wasn't just about the money, it was about power. He climbed the ranks of Sweden's government during a period of weak monarchy. Under King Magnus IV Eriksson, he served as a counselor and marshal. But Magnus was financially strained, often borrowing from nobles like Bo to fund war and governance. When Magnus couldn't repay these loans, he granted Bo castles, manors, and fiefs as collateral. Land Bo rarely returned. By 1363, Bo led an aristocratic rebellion against Magnus, frustrated by high taxes and loss of noble influence. He allied with Albert II, Duke of Mecklenburg, and in 1365 helped install Albert's son Albrecht as King of Sweden. In return, Bo was appointed officials generalis, the king's highest official, in 1369, and Lord High Steward in 1371, giving him vast physical and administrative control. Bo's grip on Finland came as a reward for his role in Albrecht's ascension. By 1374, he had secured titles to all Finnish fiefs, including key fortresses like Åbo, Tavastehus, and Viborg. This wasn't a purchase in modern sense, but a feudal grant cemented by his position as the king's enforcer. Finland's inclusion in his domain doubled his influence, making him ruler of a region larger than many European kingdoms. So, Bo Jonsson didn't shy away from unscrupulous methods. He lent money to struggling nobles and peasants, foreclosing on their properties when they defaulted. Some accounts suggest he used coercion or manipulated legal claims to seize land. His base at Gripsholm Castle, which he built in Mariefred, oversaw a personal empire spanning from Lake Mälarens valleys, Hälsingland, Västergötland, Östergötland, and the Småland coast. Small land, if you translate it, including Kalmar. His wealth wasn't liquid cash, but land and the income it generated, rents, taxes, and agricultural output. By the time of his death in 1386, Bo controlled more land than King Albrecht, effectively making him Sweden's de facto ruler. He even structured his will to prevent the king from reclaiming his estates, appointing a council of lords to manage them. This move sparked conflicts that later contributed to the Kalmar Union in 1397, a unification of the Scandinavian crowns, partly driven by the power vacuum Bo Jonsson Grip left. It was Queen Christina from Denmark that unified Scandinavia, and she did a good job. We might need that today. We might need to unify Scandinavia under a constitution, maybe. Could be a good idea. And to say that he bought a third of Sweden and most of Finland is a slight exaggeration of the mechanism. Bo didn't purchase these lands outright with a single transaction, but accumulated them through feudal grants, foreclosures, and political leverage. So his holdings included over a third of Sweden's territory and nearly all of Finland. An unprecedented private estate. Adjusted for the era, his wealth in land and power rivaled that of modern billionaires in relative terms, though it's hard to quantify in today's dollars since it was tied to medieval economics. And last but not least, Bo Jonsson Grip's success was a product of his time, a weakened monarchy, a devastated population, and a nobility eager to consolidate power. He wasn't a merchant or industrialist, but a feudal lord who turned instability into opportunity. His story contrasts with modern Swedish wealth like that of IKEA's Ingvar Kamprad and H&M's Stefan Persson, for example. Built on commerce and innovation, Bo's empire was raw, medieval, and unapologetically opportunistic. So there you go. But he kind of went underground. He put kings on his premises, and we never heard about him anymore. We don't know what happened to his estate. He obviously protected it with legislative power. Well, has anything changed? Is it possible that Axel Oxenstierna inherited Bo Jonsson Grip's estate and started to build the national state on top of it? I mean, how come Axel Oxenstierna became so powerful as well? That he exported modern bureaucracy around the world. He, even before, like in 1660s, 70s, sent the Mayflower to America to found the first state. It wasn't really the first state, but Sweden were there, colonializing America. It's the place called Delaware today. So Sweden has been there for a long time. Sweden has existed for almost 1,000 years. And before that, you had the Vikings running rampant, right? And they went to Ukraine. I think there's a strange coincidence that there's an old town in Ukraine called the Old Swedish Town. And they do seem to have similar colors to the Swedish flag. Delaware do too, to be fair. Just look at the Delawarean flag and you might drop a jaw. Well, it is a coincidence. And you also have Ericsson, you have the Wallenberg family in 184 countries around the world. Now, there's a lot of Americans talking about this, more than, here in Sweden. And if we can help you guys, give you some puzzle pieces to the puzzle, well, that's great. So I hope this has been valuable, and let me know in the comments, like, subscribe, follow the YouTube channel, and just, give me your thoughts. Let me know what you think about Bo Jonsson Grip. Is there any historical equivalent to it? I don't think so. What do you think about the banks printing money out of thin air? Is it a good thing? Or is it a problem we need to change? I don't really know. I'm asking you, what do you think? And what do you think about the Tesla car? I have not tried it. I don't know. Do you like Tesla? Is the Chinese brands better? Let us know in the comment section and have a great day. Take care.